All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. More MMA commentary for you. Pleased to be joined by Anthony Smith yet again. Do me a favor, take a moment, though. Hit the like button, subscribe button. You can leave your criticism in the comment section. As always, run over to Twitter. You can follow me at Shutdown Safety. You can follow Anthony at, I believe it's Lionheart Smith, right?
Absolutely.
See? Look at that. Like a professional. Want to talk about Bellator MMA and the big signing that they trounced out today of Matt Mitrione. Now, in the beginning, Matt had kind of came out and said that I guess there was some type of battle between the UFC and Bellator to keep him under contract. And I really don't understand this, because if you look at what he's done in the UFC, he's been knocked out and submitted by two of the top guys, in Travis Browne and Ben Rothwell. He's lost to Roy Nelson, who was a pretty big draw before that. And if anything, he's at like the cusp of the top 15. You know, it's going to take him, in my opinion, you having the ultimate say in this, I would think 4 to 5 wins to get back to have a justifiable run at the top 5. He wasn't putting that together in the UFC at all.
I don't know what the battle that Bellator and the UFC are going through right now. I don't quite understand it. I don't know if they're – sometimes I think that they're battling each other, and it's not so much fighting over fighters. You know what I mean? I wonder if the UFC is trying to keep guys from Bellator to, you know, keep a competitor away. You know what I mean?
But I guess from my perspective as a fan, these are two organizations that are pretty far apart. It just so happens that a lot of the fighters end up going back and forth, and a lot of times it's actually the fighters that create more controversy about it than the actual organizations do. I mean, Rampage Jackson's a great example. I mean, as a fighter,
Right.
do you look at it that way, or do you feel like these are organizations on equal playing fields?
I absolutely don't think that they're on even playing fields. I think that's pretty well known that the UFC is the premier organization, you know. And I think that when you hear fighters doing that kind of stuff, I think that it's them being grateful for the organization that they're in. I think that Rampage was happy when Bellator was treating him good, and I think that he was, you know, because he was mad at the UFC when he left. And so I think with that specific example, I think that you have to talk good about the people that are paying you, and I can't blame them for that. You know what I mean? I totally understand. You can't really bite the hand that's feeding you. So when a person asks you a question about your boss, knowing that your boss is going to hear it, that's when you start talking good about your boss, because you want to keep getting paid, you want to keep getting fights, you want to keep working, and talking bad about them is definitely not a way to keep that going, you know?
I don't even know if it's talking bad about them. It's public perception. I don't know if Scott Coker, to anyone's face, could legitimately sit there and say that they surpass UFC or they're on the same level. Are they rivals? Most certainly. That's undeniable.
No, and I don't think that Scott Coker would do that. I just don't, you know, because there's too many ways to dispute that. And I don't think, and I think that that's why you see Bellator kind of going the direction that they're going, because they can't compete with the UFC in their own game. You know, with the kind of like we talked about before, the freak show cards, the weird antics, the WWE-esque type of promotion. I think that's the reason they went that direction, is because it's a different direction than the UFC is in.
Well, when you say that, I mean, let's talk about what you do with Matt Mitrione. He's not even prime right now to come in and maybe rematch Cheick Kongo, who he's lost to. You know, Cheick's won 4 of the last 5. He split a loss to King Mo. I can't see them feeding him to Bobby Lashley or cutting that off. I mean, you can't really rematch him with Kimbo Slice, which may be the only interesting draw they have. Clearly that's out the window, because before this signing, Kimbo's got the drug test. Unless, like you said, they're willing to shelf this huge star for 90 days to build up a fight with Bellator, because they're not going to penalize Kimbo for the drug test.
I don't see why they couldn't feed him to Bobby Lashley, or why they couldn't give him Cheick Kongo, regardless of what his record was in the UFC. Bellator seems to act like none of that stuff really happens. You know what I mean? And they're not against going against the rules and going against the grain a little bit. So honestly, I wouldn't be that surprised to see them do something like that, especially because, I mean, are they really going to waste a big star like Matt Mitrione on a lesser fight I think that they'd be wasting their money by doing that. Because that Matt Mitrione wasn't cheap. So, I mean, they have to make him worth it. They got to make him. They got to get their money out of him. So, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't give him Bobby Lashley or Chet Congo or whatever. Because no one in Bellator is going to talk about his UFC career.
Well, in my opinion, if you do that, so let's assume then that based on the way they presented this signing, you bring him, you paid him more than, let's say, 80%. Being generous, I'd say it's fair. You're paying him more than 80% of your rosters. You bring him in, and he drops. He loses now twice. We'll use Chet Congo as an example. He loses now twice to Chet Congo. That investment you've made in him isn't paying off because you've diminished his value. It's almost like you need to give him someone to say, okay, beat this person, then we'll get you elevated up. And apart from that, I don't think it would be fair to the people that have fought in that division to just have somebody come in and leapfrog them because, well, you just took a step down from the UFC.
A lot of times they're taking guys who didn't do well in the UFC or weren't doing well or were cut or, obviously weren't worth it to the UFC to pay more money and fight Bellator a little more. And then you're giving them all these high-profile fights. So, what's going to happen is Ben Henderson, who wasn't the UFC champion, and then you give him a title shot. So then the guy who wasn't even the champion in the UFC is coming right in and going to win your title. So that's probably what's going to happen. What does that say about your own organization?
Yeah, what does it say about your quality of competition? The last thing I want to talk about here, and maybe the thing that irks me the most. So I'll read this to you verbatim. One of the things that I don't like is kind of the cat and mouse game. In the press release of signing him, this is what Bellator said. Forced to participate in a media session barefoot as his shoes didn't adhere to the strict company uniform policy, he will have no such problems in Bellator where he is free to secure his own sponsorships. Now, obviously, sponsorships are a huge deal in MMA. Obviously, we all know, for better or worse, UFC signed the exclusive Reebok contract. And to me, it is a big deal because it's a huge step as a company to have the ability to go and say, listen, we're going to have an exclusive provider. Obviously, as a fighter, you've probably lost a good chunk of your side money in sponsorships because you're not able to wear them anymore. But for them to use this as a positive point, like a fighter would want to come over, or a fighter would have to be barefoot in these interviews because he can't wear his whatever brand shoes.
As a fighter in the UFC, I know how that shit works. They didn't force him to be a part of the interview or the press conference or whatever it was barefoot. There's a whole department in the UFC that's dedicated to giving you everything that you need. I mean, down to your socks, your underwear, your shoes, your shorts, your shirt, your hoodie, everything. Everything. They make sure that you have everything you need, and they go out of their way to make sure that you have that. So the reason he was barefoot is because he didn't want to adhere to the rules. Probably he didn't. If he was wearing his Reebok flip flops, socks, shoes that they provide you as soon as you get there, then you don't have that fucking problem. And my biggest issue with the Reebok thing is everybody bitching about it. Like, it's here. The deal is it's there. And obviously people are going to say, well, you haven't been in the UFC that long, so you don't know. I do know. I've been fighting a very long fucking time. And sponsorship has been a big part of my income. But it's the rules. It's the rules. And Reebok pays you. Maybe it's not as great as a lot of other people can go out and get, but realistically, the UFC could cut your sponsors and not give you a dime. And 95% of the people in the world would still fight in the UFC because I'm one of them. If they said that, I would, okay, I guess I'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Because that's where I want to be. It's the premier organization in the world. That's just how it is. So just do it. Just stick to the fucking rules, and you won't have a problem. Like, I don't know why everyone wants to be so abrasive. Obviously Ben Henderson made a whole lot of money in sponsorships. But if your main goal isn't being the best fighter in the world, then of course that's going to bother you. If Ben Henderson was still chasing world championships and wanted to be known as the best 170 pounder or whatever he is now in the world, he wouldn't be complaining about it. Like, Ben Henderson isn't hurting for money. You know what I mean? So I get him being upset. I get a lot of guys. Matt Mitrione probably made a lot of money in sponsorships. I understand him being upset about missing out on the money. But people complaining about it so much shows me that their mind and their heart isn't in the right place. Because I never once I've never once kind of hinged my career on money. I want to be the best fucking middleweight on the planet, and I want everybody to know it. And that goal has no dollar signs behind it. So every time I hear someone complain about it, it's almost like I think, all right, I see where your head's at. You know what I mean? I see where your motivation is. If I was fighting someone and I heard them and they just kept talking about the Reebok money and the Reebok this and the Reebok that, and this is how much money I'm missing out on, then you don't want it as bad as I want it. Because I've scraped by using change to get food. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just happy that my bills are getting paid. Reebok doesn't have to pay us. The UFC could take all that money and make us wear the shit or not fight and not pay us a goddamn thing. So I'm in a position right now in my career where I'm happy to be there because I'm chasing a world championship, and it just drives me fucking crazy listening to people complain about the rules. They're the rules. If you don't like it, go somewhere else, and that's what people are doing. So I would rather than do exactly what Matt Mitrione did and just fucking leave. You know, like, no one wants to hear you bitch.